All right, I'm going to call our meeting to order. Today is June 22nd, 2021, and this is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. If I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Greg Blasbo.
Here.
Lisa Hildebrand.
Here.
Jennifer Hoskins. Here. Jennifer Lima. Here. Jake Mather. Here. Sally Schott.
Thank you. And if you could please call the calendar.
The calendar: Tuesday, August 10th, 2021, school committee business meeting. Tuesday, August 24th, 2021, school committee business meeting.
Thank you. And so next we have presentations and recognitions with a presentation on changes to the North Kingstown High School Senior Project.
Good evening to all in attendance. I've been told that this, it's not picking up. Okay. Is that better? Yes, okay. Thank you. I've been told that the presentation of Google Slides may be available in the agenda for those of you in the audience who might want to follow along. Tonight, I am presenting to you about work-based learning at North Kingstown High School. My name is Leslie Holcroft, and I'm here with my colleague, Rich Garland, who is the coordinator, the curriculum coordinator for the Business and Finance Academy. My role at the high school is as an English teacher, and I also run the senior project program. And we're on the first introductory slide for those of you on the school committee. I'm going to move to the next slide. A 2019 study found that 73% of employers perceived that it was very difficult to find qualified candidates for the jobs that they had available at their workplaces. And this study was explained in an article called New Study: Demand for Uniquely Human Skills Increases Even as Technology and Automation Replace Some Jobs. So we have a problem that we bring to you, the school committee, this evening. And that is that we have high-quality programming at North Kingstown High School, and we have a school to be proud of. I'm certainly proud of my position here at North Kingstown High School. But we have a future ahead of us that is uncertain for our students, and we need to start thinking about the planning that we're putting forth for curriculum in the future of our school that's going to address the unique problem-solving challenges that our students face. Next slide. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about the new RIDE requirement for work-based learning for all students at North Kingstown High School. I'm going to explain where we are now with addressing that requirement. I'll explain the steering committee work that has taken place this year and give you an outlook of the future of work-based learning. Slide. So first of all, the RIDE requirement for work-based learning. The Rhode Island Department of Education would like to see all students adopt a work-based learning program that includes 80 hours of work-based learning experience for all students by the year 2025. So that would be our incoming freshmen who would be completing this graduation requirement. In addition to 80 hours of work-based learning that looks very similar to project-based learning, they want to see work-based learning built into the curriculum of all courses at the high school. Next slide. There are 5 Rhode Island Department of Education models for how they want this work-based learning requirement to look for students, what they want the 80 hours to really encompass. And the 5 models are internship, where students go to a workplace, apprenticeship, highly formal job training, service learning projects, school-based enterprise, which essentially means that students are running a business from within the school, And finally, industry projects, where students find a problem that they'd like to solve within an industry and create a project with the plan of solving that problem, or at least proposing a solution. So although these are the methods for earning those 80 hours that go towards the graduation requirement, the idea is that there would be work-based learning skill development leading up to that project work. It wouldn't all happen in that project. We need to build a foundation for students of the skill set that they need. Slide. So what do we have currently at the high school that addresses this problem, that we need to have 80 hours of work-based learning for all students as a graduation requirement? Slide. We already have high-quality programming in place. What you see here on the slide is just a sampling of what we have at the high school that addresses work-based learning, but some of our stronger programs include the CTE program, the internships that we have for students within the CTE program, our pairing with Prepare RI. We have a senior project program. The SIT committee is currently working on a vision of the graduate, and we have a robust selection of elective courses to offer our students. So today I want to talk to you a little bit, before we move on to the steering work committee, about two of those options for work-based learning. I want to tell you a little bit about senior project, but first I'm going to invite Rich Garland up to talk to you about some examples of what's happening in the CTE program.
Thank you, Leslie. You probably hear me better, but I can take my mask off, but I wouldn't want to put you through a Phantom of the Opera experience, but it's a joke. All right, so thank you, Leslie. Barbara, I have to comment on your appointment of Leslie on this program of transformation. She's excellent. I mean, she's been yelling at me. I've had the opportunity to kind of sit with her as she's building the presentation, and she has a very enterprise view, which I didn't. She keeps on yelling at me, it's not just about business, Rich. It's not just about people that are going into business or finance. It's about the entire school. People want to become plumbers and teachers, so I think I'm learning. Okay, let me take you through what we do, at least one of the academies. We have 4 academies. We have music and fine arts. We have engineering. We have IT and computer science, business. So we're going to use the Business and Finance Academy as an example. The slide that I'm on, it says using CTE as an example, Academy of Business and Finance. There's great work going on in each of the academies. I have to compliment Joy Tavano, who is in charge of our internship program, Mallory Shields for engineering, Wendy Valenti for IT, Rick Powell certainly over IT and computer science. Take a look at this slide. Underneath this, what you don't see if you peel the layer below is our curriculum in Business and Finance, the Academy. It's very much focused on authenticating the classroom. So there's projects, there's guest speakers, all the things that you would think about bringing people from the field, what I know as from the field for business, coming in and working with the students. So take a look at now this slide, which is really a continuance. The startup of the year, usually around January or February, there's a shadow program that's sponsored by the Treasurer, the General Treasurer magazine for the state of Rhode Island. They bring in people from professionals from banking, people from government, usually from Mr. Magazine's own staff, and from nonprofit advocacy organizations. And it's a shadow program. It gives students an idea of what goes on in those, I'll call them enterprises. It gives them an idea of what the job types are, what the traditional day-to-day, what they do. So give them a good flavor of what goes on in the business world, certainly in banking. Then we move on to internship. That pretty much occurs throughout the year, usually in the junior year of a student. Joy actually will work with students to identify a business sponsor, which they can do 80 hours of work. And we actually track that in the National Academy Foundation database. We have all the sponsors, we have their hours, and we also evaluate them at the end of their internship. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not a perfect model. Because a lot of these students will actually find their own sources of sponsorship. But we're getting a little bit better at that because we have a board, a combined board of engineering and business, and we're starting to tap some of those people that are on that board from businesses in the field to help sponsor students in their internship. We move, so that satisfies the 80 hours. We then are looking at, and actually had some success with what we call industry projects that Leslie had described earlier. And we're leveraging what's called DECA, which is International Organization of Young Entrepreneurs and Business Professionals. And with that comes a series of competitive events we call career pathways And Joy and I identified a number of those which require sponsors from the field, which we did a pilot on too, and very successful. One was with Ernst & Young, and it was really to come up with a business operations plan for Washington Bank in terms of adopting digital currency. Another one was with Edward Jones, which was a difficult one, in which they developed a program to educate the community on financial literacy. So that supported the 80 hours. We're going to do more of that. We identified more projects. We're actually influencing students to join DECA. We actually had 83 students last year. It is a chapter. We're looking at things for next year, like school-based enterprise, where they actually can do community advocacy, community programs like the muscular dystrophy. That's a competitive event in DECA. And also service learning. I'm sorry, I have them reversed. Service learning is what I just described. School-based enterprise is really actually developing a school store, and it could be virtual. And they compete on how much revenue they bring in the business with DECA, and we can leverage that for students in terms of building experience that they would have to build in terms of entrepreneurship and business. This is all supported by the National Academy Foundation, which also has business sponsors, AT&T, Verizon, Lenovo, Johnson & Johnson, and we're getting more engaged with them. We are accredited academy, and they're also very focused on work-based learning, so we can leverage them quite a bit. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And a lot of you probably know I have 34 years in the private sector, and I've only been teaching for 10 years. Thank you, North Kingstown, for letting me come here and teach. But I teach what I did. And so I did have a chance to talk to some executives, one being Edward Ludwig, who's the former chairman of Becton Dickinson. And he actually volunteers to speak with students about their careers. And here's what he said to me when I asked him what do businesses look for. He said, I'm not expecting depth of skill, deep expertise in one area. What I look for is breadth of capability. And so let me take you through some of the things that also when I worked with high schools, when I was with IBM, what we look for in high school candidates for job roles within IBM, just to actually give them experience in business. Dependability. A lot of you from business probably look for the same thing. Taking personal ownership of the job role, pride and professionalism. That's what we look for in students. Self-motivation. Intrinsic students that have a drive to organize rather than the need. We don't want to have to constantly guide them, right? They have intrinsic driven to learn. Solid work ethic. Students that represent the business brand. Okay, you can't hear me? Okay. Initiative. Problem solvers who get the job done in spite of challenges, think on their feet. Thank you. Team player, participative, responsive, flexible, and fitting into the work environment. Very important. Adopting the culture and fitting within the culture. And commitment to demonstrate enthusiasm and passion. And certainly probably one of the most important things is what they learn on the job, they can apply. Put basic skills to action. So what I look for is potential, that I can mold them. I can teach them anything that we do. I can teach them the process of if they work in the accounting department, I can teach them reconciliation within a month. But I really want people that have the drive that can be molded. And what we did at IBM is basically those that we were interested, we gave them scholarships to UConn, and then eventually brought them back into the business. But they were prepared. So that's the end of my spiel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. I'm going to go on to the next slide. So the other programming that we do have at the high school that pairs nicely with the Work-Based Learning Initiative is our senior project programming. This reaches all seniors. It's a graduation requirement at North Kingstown currently, and we'll be back next year. We had a little hiatus from it this year. Many of you have volunteered to judge presentations at the end of this process, but for those of you who haven't, Senior Project is a year-long endeavor in which students come with their own ideas. They can choose any topic that they want to work on for their senior project as long as it can fit one of the project categories. And the categories are they can create a product, provide a service, plan and host an event, conduct a study, or improve a system. So a lot of students start with an idea that has to do with a topic they're already passionate about. Maybe they've worked on that topic in the past, or maybe it's something they've always wanted to pursue but never have had the opportunity to, or don't think they will have the opportunity to in the future. Students begin with a research phase in which they find 3 sources to support the idea that they have for their project, or maybe to guide them toward an idea. And then they conduct a personal interview with an expert in the field of the topic they're interested in. From there, they enter the proposal phase where they sit down one-on-one with their English teacher for an interview-style assessment called the mid-year conference, where they propose their idea and they get to have a conversation with their English teacher about their planning and where they could go with that idea. Next, all of the students branch off to work on their project, and this looks very different for each student depending on what they chose to do for the project. But along the way, they keep a set of work logs to document what they've been doing, and they collect evidence to show what they did for the project work along the way. And finally, the senior project ends with a presentation night. This is a really exciting night for our seniors. It's also very anxiety-provoking, but they're very excited and pleased with themselves when it's over. Similarly, the audience, the judges who come to participate, resoundingly love being part of presentation night. It's a really neat experience. The slide that you have in front of you shows a couple of different students on a presentation night, one of whom created a guitar from scratch. He built it. Oh, thank you. He built it from scratch, and that was something that, didn't relate to a career goal necessarily, but was a passion project that he had. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Here you see pictured a student, Ed, who I had in English class a couple of years ago, and when he entered senior project, he knew that he wanted to do something related to his experience working with the volunteer fire department in Jamestown. I encouraged Ed to reach out to the fire chief to ask about what kinds of projects would be viable to go along with his work at the fire station. And he decided, along with the fire chief, that he was going to build what they call these model doll houses. And the purpose of these doll houses is to create an exhibition for incoming firefighters as a training model so that they can watch smoke and fire patterns happening inside the doll houses. You can see the little doors on the front of one of the houses that let in more oxygen or restrict oxygen to show the firefighters how they can expect smoke and fire patterns to move throughout a building. Ed was really passionate about this project, and to see him get up in front of an audience and feel like an authority figure on a topic was really amazing. One of the pinnacle pieces of senior project is that during this presentation, students are supposed to talk about the project, but the main point of it is what we call learning stretch, where students talk about what they learned about themselves and what about this project challenged them to grow beyond where they were before. Slide. So we have these two phenomenal programs, but there are some issues with how they coincide with RIDE's new graduation requirement of 80 hours of work-based learning for all students. The CTE and internship program only reaches a small percentage of students, and it's challenging to extend further. It's really difficult to find enough internships for the students that we already have in the program, not to mention if we were doing this school-wide. The senior project program is not necessarily industry-related. Students can choose a topic of their choice. And the timeline isn't flexible enough. This really needs to be programming that can reach all the way from 9th grade through 12th grade, not just be housed in 12th grade. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So in the absence of a senior project program this year, I had the time to form a steering committee to address Rhode Island Department of Ed's work-based learning initiative. On the next slide, you can see that I have a group of educators from all different disciplines who've been working on this with me. And I'd like to give credit to these people. I have Pete Maroney from Special Ed. I have Mia Toro representing guidance. Emily Callahan from the Fine Arts Department. Cindy Zito represents mental health and wellness. Marie Morgan represents physical health and wellness. I have Rich Polsino from the English Department. I have Dave Abedishan from the History Department. Cam Rowland represents information and technology resources. Joy Tavano representing internship and career education, and finally Shivali Finkelstein, who, as you know, is the assistant principal of teaching and learning at the high school. We hope to add more educators to our committee in the future, and we also want the input from other stakeholders. We don't want just educators in a bubble creating this programming. We want input from students and families and community members and business partnerships. On the next slide, you can see a draft of North Kingstown's vision of the graduate. This is where the steering committee began their work by examining the work being done by the SIT committee on creating a vision of the graduate. This work is important because, as you can see in this document that is in draft form, we're really trying to get a handle on the skills that are most important for our students leaving high school and going into college and career workplaces. The SIT committee is doing excellent work. They're just beginning to reach out to other stakeholders and being really thoughtful about making sure they don't just hear the loudest voices. And so we know that we want to emulate that work on our steering committee. Ultimately, the vision of the graduate is really a promise that we make to our students about what skills they can expect to have when they leave us, and that's essentially what we're trying to do with our steering committee work as well. On the next slide, you can see a list that our steering committee came up with of our why behind this work. Why is this work important to us? And essentially, when it boils down, what do we want that to represent about who we are and what we believe that students need from us? That first point is so important. We want programming that is flexible, because we cannot expect a 9th grade student to come in and know exactly what they want to do for their career life. So we need programming that can flex with them as their interests grow. We want programming that is meaningful and hands-on. We want students to have a reason to come to school besides just earning grades. And we want to teach our students to be persistent and resilient, that they should expect failure as part of the process, and that it means that they're learning something. On the next slide, the ultimate goal is that we plan a program for our school that at its core reflects what we and other stakeholders believe will empower students to understand themselves and have a basis for workplace competency. But we also want to be thoughtful about what we don't want for kids. So what do we need to accomplish this work? On the next slide, you can see we're going to need creative problem solving. This is an enormous undertaking. I can tell you from experience that just getting 300 students to engage with a senior project and follow it all the way through to its completion is a large task. It doesn't always go well, but it always is a learning experience. And we need the same thing out of this programming, but this programming has to be 9 through 12. So it's going to be an enormous undertaking, and we're going to need to come up with creative solutions for how to meet RIDE's requirement. But we do have some tools and resources to use. For example, the guidance department is already using a program called Zello to track student progress with interest inventories, and that same program will be used to track student progress toward their work-based learning competency. We already have business and community partnerships, but we need to strengthen them and add to them. And then we're going to have to come up with creative ideas for how to engage students. On the other end of the spectrum, we need career-based content in all courses, and that's going to require some teacher buy-in. So we need to be thoughtful about how we present this to teachers and how we show them the benefit of this kind of workplace learning, what it would actually be like to go into an internship. There's something called teacher externships where they follow what a path of a student would look like in a workplace that sound like they would be really fun. We're going to need professional development, and ultimately we'll need paid time to do the work. So next slide, the future of work-based learning. On the following slide, you'll see a sample progression of what a 9 through 12 work-based learning program could look like. This is just an example of what we've been working on and talking about. You can see that through 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, we tried to identify kind of one idea to be the focal point of that grade. So for example, it could start with course instruction on workplace skills that then in 10th grade translates to hands-on training in that skill set, that builds to a project type of work that ends in 12th grade with a presentation about growth, experiences, and goals. So I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation, but I would also appreciate the opportunity to continue to brief you and all the future, to brief you all in the future of our progress. And as stakeholders yourselves, I hope to have your support as we undergo this important transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. recognitions? You need to put your microphone on, sorry.
Leslie, thank you very much for the great presentation, and I'm looking forward to hearing more as we progress. It's a lot to take on. We have a few things to present. This week has been just absolutely incredible for North Kingstown, not the least of which is, Lisa Garcia's, recognition as the Rhode Island Teacher of the Year. That was a really proud moment for all of us to be at that ceremony. Go ahead and clap, that's great. One thing that I don't know if I fully I mentioned it, but this school, North Kingstown High School, currently has 3 Rhode Island Teachers of the Year. I don't know if there's any other school in the state that can claim that. And in that same time, there was one National Teacher of the Year from North Kingstown. So we are really blessed to have a tremendous teaching staff, and they're just some of the best examples of the great people we have working for us here in North Kingstown. It has also been an incredible week for, I gotta get this back here, for sports. And we had a Division I boys volleyball undefeated state champions. Thank you, representatives from the Booster Club, for leading that clap. We have Division II girls lacrosse undefeated state champions. Division II boys lacrosse state champions. I know that team, Tanner Wadovic was the hometown hero from WPRI. Great for him. We also have the boys baseball state finals starting on Thursday. Congratulations to them getting to this point. The boys and girls state open track championships Saturday. The girls have already are Class A champions, so congratulations to them. And the wrestling state championships on Saturday, this coming Saturday, is also happening as well. So there's so much going on. Our athletic director doesn't know which way is up this week because he's at so many different events. But we also really proud to see a news feature on Dan Ventura, who is a graduating senior this year and a tremendous, has been the #1 pianist at his level for every year since 7th grade in the state of Rhode Island. And he's such a treasure to have here in North Kingstown all those years, and it's nice to see him get that recognition as well. Dr. Mansieri?
Okay, and back to academics. We just heard Rich Garland talk a little bit about the CTE and Leslie Holcroft, and I'd like to just continue that because Joy Tavano, who's in that department, internship coordinator and business educator in the Business and Finance Academy, was one of 4 National Academy Foundation teachers nationally selected to participate in the NAF District C pilot program in fall of 2021. This summer, she will take part in a 50-hour virtual District C Coaching Institute for teachers, and that is an interactive opportunity to learn how to coach students through an authentic project, and she'll experience this process for herself as well. And this fall, North Kingstown students will embark on a real-world project with support from the project partner and their mentors. And the final one is from Davisville Middle School. RITEL, which is the Rhode Island Teachers for English Language Learners, which is a nonprofit organization, publishes a newsletter 2 times a year. In the spring newsletter, they encourage teachers to share some ways families have shown resilience this year. And the following was a highlight from our own Patty Kerwin, an English language specialist at Davisville Middle School. She says, "My bright spot came during access testing." For those of you that don't know that, that's the same thing as a RICAS test or like a language test for students that are learning English. She tested 16 children in grades 6 through 8, and all 16 showed up on both days, which isn't an easy feat because many of our families stayed home. So every parent and student made the effort to not only show up, but at 8 a.m. on the dot. One parent took time out of work to transport their child. She was blown away by the response. The pride and commitment of these families warmed my heart and filled me with hope. I believe this is the result of building relationships, respect, trust, and caring. In my book, relationships are the most important thing. And I just wanted to make sure I highlight our English language specialists who work very hard every day to make sure they're getting all of the core subjects to those students that are here, and we're really making strides there. So thank you to Patty. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's a whole lot to talk about. Great way to end here. Next, we have citizens' comments. So I'll say what I always say, which is we do ask if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you could state your name and address for the record. I'm going to start with the people that are here, and then I'll see if anyone wants to phone in after we're done with anyone who's here who wants to speak. Did we have a sign-up list or no? No, okay. So if anyone would like to speak, you can come up to the microphone. Actually, that one on the left, sorry. Give it a tap just to make sure that it's on. I'm not sure if it is yet. Sorry. It is. Thank you.
It's on. Hi. My name is Lori Duffy, 88 Haverhill Ave. I live in North Kingstown, and I also operate a small private practice in North Kingstown as well. And actually, I'm here today as my role as a clinical social worker who specializes in children and the mental health of children and families. So I'm here asking the school committee to not cower to the threats and demands of those that are here opposing anti-racist education and school groups that aim to help students have a safe place to gather, talk, and organize. When I saw a notice this morning from the group Teachers Against Indoctrination, to be honest, my hands began to tremble. Immediately, I thought of the young people who I've worked with over the years, both here in North Kingstown and throughout the state, who never feel like they belong, who never feel like they're good enough, who have to work harder to prove themselves, who are called horrible names, who are pushed aside, who keep their heads down and try not to be noticed. I also know that there's higher incidence of suicide in our LGBT community, and just calling a transgender person by their chosen name gives them hope to live one more day. I've talked to families in this very town and can report that, yes, Black youth are called the N-word by their peers, teachers calling out students unexpectedly to speak on behalf of their culture, BIPOC children being labeled as disruptive, while white children with similar behaviors are labeled energetic. Now, that being said, I can also name 100 more ways that teachers are amazing and wonderful, how administrators and staff support our young people. I myself have many close relationships with teachers here, and I see their hard work and diligence all the time. But just because NK is a good school doesn't mean we can't make things better. Some of you have asked why incidents are not reported in the school, and it's because people are scared. Scared that they won't be believed, scared that they'll be put under the microscope. And I think we can all say that based on what this group, Teachers Against Indoctrination, are trying to do, we can see why people might feel that way. The school committee allows this group to cause a healthy and important student group to be shut down. They're not going to stop. They're going to continue to spread lies, false information, in an attempt to scare parents and staff into thinking things that aren't true. When we're scared, we jump to conclusions. We don't take time to learn for ourselves. When I taught at Rhode Island College, I taught critical thinking skills, the 3 A's. My students knew them well. Assess the information, ask questions, and assert your opinion. I'm asking the school committee to call on their own critical thinking skills and ask yourself if a BIPOC and LGBTQ school group is really, and I quote, separating children and teachers by skin color and privilege and social engineering, as this group has reported. I can show you their action alert, calling their supporters to be here tonight. I'm asking you, don't listen to the propaganda that's meant to divide us and scare you. Support these kids. Give them a safe place to talk, gather, and meet. Support these kids and think of their mental health for all of the decisions that you guys are making. They are not hurting anyone, but they are being attacked right now, and I hope you protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, if you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Carlos Hernandez, and I live at 1259 Lafayette Road. First, I just want to say thank you for very amazing words that Lori just shared, but I'll keep mine very short and sweet. I wanted to come here to voice my support and emphasize the importance of the DEI subcommittee and the Racial Equity Alliance. My daughter is a freshman that attends this school and also attends the Racial Equity Alliance affinity group. And I know that some may disagree with this symbol of progress that these groups represent, but I agree with Lori that it should not distract us from how necessary these groups are to ensure that we are being as fair, inclusive, and equitable as possible to all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ramona Bernstein. I just want to first thank NK Schools for providing a
Sorry, if
diverse...
you could name and address for us. Sorry.
Ramona Bernstein, 437 Davitt Avenue, Jamestown, Rhode Island.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, that's okay. I just wanted to thank the NK School Department for providing an excellent, diverse, equitable, and inclusive education for all 4 of my children. I currently have 1 child still in the system. There is absolutely no indication to me, as a mother and a teacher, by the way, of 22 years, that this district has any deficits in equity, diversity, or inclusion. In fact, I feel that this district has gone above and beyond to comply with all of the RIDE mandates and to be inclusive and kind and decent to all children, including my own, one who has an IEP. What I would like is to be a part of the DEI discussion as an educator, but also as a mother, because the proposals that are currently on the table regarding critical race theory have nothing to do with fairness and equity and inclusion. In fact, they exclude. I'm a teacher of 22 years, and I am seeing the new curriculum materials roll into the school where I teach. And quite frankly, I was absolutely shocked and disgusted at the materials that I have seen. They're dangerous. They are excluding a huge part of history, and they need to be looked at very carefully. Not only the 5 that are provided by the Rhode Island Department of Education. We need to look very closely at the data. I would like to be able to see the data that is going to be used to make any curriculum changes to this excellent, extraordinary curriculum that already exists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Tingley. I live at 750 Hatchery Road. I have 3 children that are currently in the school system, one that's about to graduate this year. And before I begin, I want to congratulate the school committee and the superintendent for providing such an excellent graduation for our seniors this year. I think that deserves a round of applause. I'm here on behalf of, I'm reading a speech from Jacob Kreider. He's a friend of ours, and he was unable to attend this meeting today. He's a graduating senior, and I've been asked to read the speech that he, the form that he typed up regarding affinity groups. It is my understanding that the DEI subcommittee has made a proposal for affinity groups. I think it is important, before expressing my approval or disapproval of these groups, to explain just what these affinity groups really are. If you look it up on Google, you get a very generic explanation regarding how they are utilized by corporations. These are groups organized based on social, ethnic, ethnic, and economic similarities. These affinity groups are divided up, and the goal is to help ideas flow from one affinity group to another and allow all socioeconomic backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds understand how more equitable and diverse workplace could be created. In other words, the belief is that dividing people up based on their socioeconomic status and ethnic status will help people come together. How this conclusion was ever come to is beyond me. This may be one of the most reaching solutions I have ever learned in my life. If you want to foster unity, diversity, and exchange of ideas among different groups of people, wouldn't you want them to work together in a unified, diverse group where they can directly exchange ideas? I think one of the most valuable parts of our pass-fail democracy class in North Kingstown High School is the fact that you are allowing people from every part of the socioeconomic spectrum to come together and discuss things such as society, justice, system, lawmaking process, political standing, political system, and more. These are people with all different levels of knowledge, grades, economic standings, and more sitting in one room together, having a discussion where nothing truly matters other than their participation. I learned more about equity gaps in the class and my AP Government and Politics class than I did in any other classes in high school. To divide students based on these factors would only make the problem worse. If you want to fix issues in diversity, equity, and more, find ways to get more students involved in things outside the classroom where they can interact, or even more pass-fail classes inside the classroom where they are graded based on their interaction and participation rather than their intelligence and the resources available outside the classroom, which would then allow them to succeed. I'm not sure what kind of backwards world we are living in by which separation is the solution to unity. I strongly urge you, as someone who has spent an entire 4 years at the North Kingstown High School and actually experienced the environment, to move against these affinity groups and develop a solution that has people from all backgrounds in the same unified
Sir,
space.
I have to ask you to try to wrap it up if you could, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unity is developed through unity. If you want to make lower income students or minority students feel like they are part of the community, treat them like they are of the community, not that they are part of their own group that needs to be separated from the rest of their society in order to find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Kim Lanaway. I live at 47 Sylvan Court. I think it's very difficult to come forward and talk about this topic because, unfortunately, the discourse is such that people who oppose the method in which some are trying to move students forward are labeled racists. I've experienced such a label recently by Greg Lasbog, who is the school committee chair. Last week, I sent an email to a number of people asking that they consider adding attendance for the graduation, which I was very happy happened. In my email, I accused the school of, or I basically made a comment to suggest that the seniors had been gypped out of their senior year of high school, and that I didn't want to see them gypped out of their graduation with the people that they love. The response that I got from Greg was as follows. I must point out that I find your use of the racial slur against the Roma people in your email extremely disturbing. If you did not realize the meaning of what you typed, I would suggest that you do some research online. If it was intentional, it reflects very poorly on your character. He was good enough not to CC everybody on the email, as he did not wish to publicly embarrass me if I was simply ignorant of the derogatory and offensive nature of my slang word choices. So I'd like to publicly apologize to all of the Roma students in North Kingstown for having used the word gypped, and I hope that I don't say anything racially offensive tonight. I sat through the DEI subcommittee meeting as they voted to create affinity groups. These groups were clearly based on skin color. Ironically, they are neither diverse, equitable, nor inclusive. Former students asserted that they had graduated years earlier from a school that was systemically racist. They provided no facts, data, or even anecdotal stories to support their claims. I wonder if they felt that way at the time or if they had been taught that since they left. One student said, quote, she wants to ask white parents what it felt like, what it's like to feel like you don't belong. I would like to tell that student that that's a very common feeling for adolescents. I was an adolescent once, I'm a parent, I'm a high school teacher, and these feelings are pretty normal and not limited to black and brown students. I grew up in a town that was mostly white. I'm a white person. I was on welfare. My father was an alcoholic. I was raised by a single mother. I had nothing in common with the people around me just because I was white. Separating into color-based groups presumes that kids who look the same have the same likes, dislikes, needs, experiences, and aspirations. This just isn't true, and I would certainly hope the adults in the room would be front and center in acknowledging the dangers of such stereotyping based on skin color. The RIDE report on civil rights violations from 2015 to 2018 for North Kingstown shows 0 suspensions related to cases of harassment or bullying based on race, gender, religion, or country of origin. I would ask that the school committee publish and publicly analyze the data that is currently available from the RIDE, including civil rights data, survey works data on school climate, union complaints on unfair hiring, outcomes by groups, administration, faculty, and coaching demographics, assessment of graduation data by demographics. Where is the data showing the need for your root cause analysis that you purport to spend money on? I myself did a quick dive, and I
have to ask you to wrap it up, please.
I found a significant disparity in graduation rates between Hispanic and white students. 81% versus 93%, that's significant. I did another quick free data search and produced metrics on chronic absenteeism. 19% absenteeism, chronic for Hispanic students compared to 10% for white students. You can't teach students who aren't in school. Perhaps the absenteeism accounts for this disparity and not the catch-up that's there before we hire a group that is clearly biased. The groups that were
Again, I'd have to ask you to please wrap it up.
mentioned the other day, before we hire outside groups to analyze data we already have.
Thank you.
So my name is Gertrude Edwards. I live at 24 Saunders Road in Saunderstown, and I actually didn't come intending to speak tonight. I came intending to listen because I heard that there was going to be some controversy. I have to say that I had a hard time listening because a lot of the people who are presenting one particular point of view were talking so much throughout the early part of the meeting and the presentation. So I do wonder how much other people were able to hear and how much people are really listening to each other here today instead of just coming to talk and present their own point of view. I also have been an educator. I'm now retired, but I spent 31 years being a teacher and administrator, mostly in private schools. I have to say those schools have been working on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues for decades. Affinity groups should not feel like a threat to anyone. Your college alumni office is an example of an affinity group. I'm I'm sad to hear that so many people here feel threatened by phrases like diversity, equity, inclusion, affinity. I do feel, having experienced it firsthand for a long time, they have to be done thoughtfully, with sensitivity, and with very sensible oversight. I think there have to be guidelines. I would think that students in such groups would have to be, have faculty advisors, just the way they do for the school newspaper, for their coaches for their sports teams, and all kinds of other school-sanctioned clubs and events. I trust this school committee and this superintendent and these administrators to handle this in a sensible, sensitive, and thoughtful way. And I feel, as the parent of 2 graduates, and my husband and I are also the godparents of 2 current students in North Kingstown Public Schools, the whole aim is to make them graduate as thoughtful, questioning, listening people. And I can't think of anything better than a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee to accomplish that aim. But again, it has to be done carefully, and I'm grateful that you are doing it with open meetings and transparently so that people can see how it's being done, and I intend to remain involved. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Halcyon Westall at 595 Hamilton Allenton in North Kingstown. Both of my children attended North Kingstown Public Schools. And I'm also in support of the DEI subgroup and support the idea of adding affinity groups to our school experience. Affinity groups are an opportunity for people to come together based on their shared identities. Just like other school clubs, like sailing or robotics or environmental clubs, they meet to share their interests. Affinity groups give participants a space to meet with others in community around their common identity. To equate affinity groups with critical race theory is a false comparison. I'm not a legal scholar, but my basic understanding is that critical race theory is a legal framework that examines the intersection of policy and legal decisions with race and how our institutions are part of shaping society. It's something taught in grad school or college. And bringing up critical race theory in this context is a distraction. The organization where I work has offered affinity groups for the past 2 years. These groups, are not mandatory, just like the proposed school affinity groups would not be mandatory. They have been an opportunity at my workplace for colleagues to have conversations in a relaxed setting. I'm part of the White and European Descent Affinity Group at my workplace. We meet monthly, and we choose to discuss how our work and our lives are impacted by race. I've found it a helpful space for me to learn and to grow. One thing that's useful about participating in affinity groups is that as I and my other white colleagues develop our understanding and our competence in talking about these issues, we're not causing harm to our colleagues who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color with unintentional missteps in our speech or in our actions. It's important that my understanding and growth does not come at a cost to my colleagues. Our children also deserve to have a space for gathering and growth and easy conversation, if they choose to meet together. Affinity groups provide a time free from exhausting emotional labor that students who have been marginalized may carry in their whole community settings. Affinity groups are not scary. There's no hidden agenda. And as I understand it, the youth are simply asking for these groups because they need them. And I think that we should believe them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elisa Hernandez. I live at 1259 Lafayette Road, and I'm the daughter of Carlos Hernandez, who previously spoke. I'm here as both a student and a member of the Racial Equity Alliance group that is formed here at this school. So I would just like to clear up some misconceptions about this group, because it seems that a lot of people are thinking that it is aiming to divide, which it is not. It is meant to be a safe place for students who have their voices talked over and overlooked, because this town and district is so white dominated, those 10% of students who are never seen, who are constantly targeted and bullied and dealing with so many things, mental health and just all of it, they deserve a chance to have their voices heard and to have their ideas and needs met, because they are people. They should not have to be afraid every day coming into school knowing that there's barely anybody in this school who looks or sounds or is in any way like them physically, or is treated the same way that they are. This group allows anyone to join, not just specific races or people from specific income backgrounds. Anyone is free to join and discuss racial inequity in the school and what they think can be done to change it. It is in no way harming any of the students, parents, or citizens of this town or school district. It is bringing people together and allowing people to feel heard for once. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Betsy Dyer. I live at 17 Johnson Avenue. I am here tonight not as a parent. I don't have any children in the school, but my background is in education. I have a master's of education, and I have been a teacher. That's not really my career. I'm actually working right now as a licensed mental health clinician. I have a private practice, and I work in a community and mental health setting. So I see a lot of the things that the previous speaker was talking about, as well as, I believe the first speaker's name was Lori, some of the things that she sees in her work. What brought me here tonight was my interest in education, and I have adult children who, maybe I'm going to have grandchildren in this school one day. So I have that interest. There were two things. I had heard that there is a group against indoctrination, and that just set off a bunch of red flags in my mind. Like, what do you mean indoctrination? I actually had to go and look up the word, because I don't understand how there can be a group against this indoctrination when there isn't any indoctrination as far as things that I've read about and talked to people about. There is no indoctrination going on. That's when you're teaching people not to question. And as far as I understand about education, I am 65, so I can claim some time in the educational system, and in my lived experience, education is about questioning. And it's also about curiosity. And we need to learn from differences. How can we learn? Education is what schools are teaching people to learn, and how can we learn if we don't learn from our differences? So one, that I wanted to speak to that, and the second thing was I'm here to support this idea of these affinity groups, and if they need to have a different name so that people understand what they're really about, okay. But I'm in support of these kinds of groups for the very reason of bringing people together. Let's share our differences. Let's have the students share their differences. their backgrounds, learn from each other, have their differences appreciated, supported, not something that separates us and puts us into silos where we can't learn from each other. My kids had the benefit of going to school overseas, and they went to international schools, and they were exposed to many different cultures, languages, religions, and they made friends with people from those backgrounds. And they have developed a curiosity and a love of questioning that has helped them in their lives and their careers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Izzy Montini, and I live at 70 Bethany Lane, North Kingstown. Over time, it has become evident that we need to be actively anti-racist to defeat racism as a whole. Being complacent is simply not enough. Acknowledging the problem and working to defeat racism within the town is more brave and productive than refusing to believe that racism exists. The DEI subcommittee and TANK seek to educate our community so we can have a more inclusive school system and a more inclusive North Kingstown. This could be relative to race, gender identity, sexual orientation, you name it. I think that our school system is, performing excellently, and I just think that we can always be working to make our school system better and to be making it more equitable for all. And working to make our town and our school more anti-racist is one of the best things that we can do to promote a better learning environment for all students. These affinity groups work to give all students a voice, for experiences to be shared, and to provide opportunities for beneficial dialogue. Those who are afraid of this type of movement are afraid of 21st century principles. Ignorance is no longer a choice, and change is what comes next. This change should be promoted and not shut down and discouraged. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Campbell, and I live in Ferry Road in Saunderstown. And I have been all at these meetings. I think I was at the last in-person meeting and have been at every meeting since we were not having our kids attend school full-time. So I've been pretty vocal. I was accused last school committee meeting about yelling and screaming because I got emotional because my child was quarantined for 10 days as a senior in high school, and as far as asymptomatic testing. So I've been on this kick for asymptomatic testing for a good 8 months. I did want to recognize tonight that there were 16 antigen and PCR tests that were safety one recalled. As a parent who was mandated to have my child test, those recalls haven't been identified why they're at a safety level 1, but it's very concerning as a parent. But why I'm bringing that in is because I think it's important for us to be able to speak our concerns. I appreciate the opportunity to come up and be able to share these. If I was a little emotional last week, as Marianne recommended, that when I spoke to, was called out for being too emotional, I think that's a problem. As a member of the community, as somebody who's been my children have been in the school system, we should feel comfortable standing up in front of everybody and saying that, yeah, we should be able to talk about this stuff. This is the most divisive I have felt in this town since I've been here. We're looked at as one group, no one's clapping for another group, people don't want to sit next to us. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. So I'm observing this tonight. And my role as a parent here is to be able to express what we disagree with and what we generally are concerned about as parents and what I want my child to learn as opposed to what another parent wants their child to learn. We should be able to talk about these things. We should be able to express our concerns. We should be able to express concerns about maybe what type of books are getting pushed by the English department, maybe what they're reading in history. If it doesn't feel right for me, like the asymptomatic testing, it didn't feel right to me, so I should be able to communicate to you as our elected officials. I should be able to have some dialogue with our elected officials about that. We should have transparency. We should be able to have these things presented and be able to ask questions without being looked at like we're crazy. I think I was probably looked at that I was crazy 9 months ago when I said I wasn't comfortable with my child being tested. I wasn't comfortable with my kid wearing a mask playing a sport. But that stuff is coming out now. And maybe this stuff will come out with critical race theory that maybe it may not be the best interest for all of the kids in the school. The DEI group, I'm not that familiar with it, to be completely honest with you. I want to learn more about it. I want you to be more transparent with your community so we know what is happening. Can we have some conversation about it? Can we get feedback about it? Can we learn more about it. And I think, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come up and talk about that, but as a community, I think it's really important that we come together, and we're not together right now. So this is not really working, not only for our children, but also for our community. I'm feeling, you know, we should be able to come up and feel comfortable sharing our concerns. So I thank you for that opportunity, and that's it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grace McCrell, and my address is 100 Misty Meadow Lane. I'm a rising junior at NK, and I'm from the North Kingstown High School Racial Equity Alliance, which was formed by students and Miss Boysclair, who's a teacher at North Kingstown. Basically, our group provides a safe space for students of color and their allies to have conversations, learn about race, and the impact it has at our school. Critical race theory is different from what our alliance is. Critical race theory was constructed to focus on the realities that people of color face by illuminating the elements of racism that pervade societal structures in the U.S. today. It should not be surprising that historical events that are dehumanizing, such as slave trade in the U.S. or the genocide of the first Americans, have long-lasting impacts on our society. What critical race theory asks is that we consider these impacts, that we look at the remains of the norms that were established when only white men were granted citizenship, the right to vote, and to own property. That we assess how these norms still disadvantage people of color today in a predominantly white town. This is even more important. The only way we can make America better is if we take a look critically how our economic, educational, political, and criminal justice systems affect the lived experiences of all American citizens, based on all the races of those citizens. As a student, I'm extremely disappointed in the bigotry that's being shown from the adults in our town tonight. Our group is simply a safe space and inclusive to everyone. I'm 100% Irish, and I joined to learn and educate and come together with other kids. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Joe Vento, 40 Cassandra Lane. It's nice to see you all again. I find myself here tonight to support the efforts made by the DEI subcommittee and to reiterate that it's crucial to promote equality, nonviolence, and maybe most importantly, coexistence during a time when there seems to be quite a bit of national turmoil unfolding over the fate of social studies and English curricula. It's important for students to see administrators and educators advancing inclusivity, diversity in our curriculum, and diversity in representation. And in the past, I've had the opportunity to speak about student voice, how student involvement is vital to school improvement, and how educators have an ethical imperative to engage students as active partners in school improvement. Hopefully you can see how those themes are kind of related. I think it's worth noting that the affinity group mentioned tonight is open to any NKHS student who would like to join. It's in our best interest as students to learn about a myriad of cultures and practices so we can be productive participants in life outside our immediate community. I look forward to seeing what the DEI subcommittee can provide for students, faculty, and staff district-wide. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Howard Brown. I live at 230 Lantern Lane East in North Kingstown. This is a good school. My daughter graduated in 2000, and she went on to graduate college with Phi Beta Kappa. So you guys did a good job. I want to talk about process. I don't want to talk about, is this racist, is that racist? Are we bigots because there is this disagreement? That doesn't take us anywhere. This process of DEI in North Kingstown is out of control. It is not transparent. There have been 2 meetings of the DEI subcommittee. As of this afternoon, no minutes of either meeting had been released to the public. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is they are out of compliance with the Open Meetings Act. And that says to me that the co-chairs, who should know better, either have something to hide or they think their work doesn't concern the public, that they know best. That's part of the reason there is such divisiveness around the question of DEI. I think it's fair to demand the immediate release of those minutes of both meetings, unless they've been released this afternoon. I think it's also fair to expect a public hearing on all recommendations that are transmitted from the DEI subcommittee to yourselves before you make any decisions on any of them. Because the DEI subcommittee is essentially based on a divisive idea, and it is divisive, of equity and not equality. Equity is not the same thing as equality. Our country and society were based on equality. The school committee should appoint a similar committee with a non-racist outlook to address problems such as there's a curriculum known as 1776 Unites. And that would represent true diversity in terms of how we deal with education, by bringing in another set of recommendations with another point of view other than the DEI marching orders. So I just want to wrap up with a formal request. I believe that according to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-6, I'm requesting the North Kingstown School Committee to discuss the DEI subcommittee authority per your policy tonight as an additional agenda item per Rhode Island General Law 42-46-6. And I'd like to hand a copy of this request to the clerk and to the chair of this school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hand it to our attorney over there for me. Sir, go ahead.
Hi, Don Thielen, 241 West Allenton Road. The reason I showed up here tonight was to
Can
find
you
out...
raise that microphone a little? Sorry, it's harder to hear you. There you go.
The reason I showed up here tonight is I wanted to find out more about the programs. And I didn't find out anything about the programs. Basically, I'm wondering why we are trying to raise such fragile children. Why we insist on grouping people into this group, that group. Everyone in here is different. There's bald people, there's Spanish people. Why do we have to have individual groups for groups? It's not the library, it's not the, the card case file where there's A, B, C, and D. Everybody has problems in their lives. Everyone has problems being brought up, the way they're brought up, the way that they're taught by their parents. Morality. It's not up to the school boards or the school department to teach morality. It's a parent's job. And frankly, a lot of the parents have given up their responsibility on teaching morality. It's got to stop. Enough is enough. Are we going to have 2 separate buildings here, 3 separate buildings, 4 separate buildings because someone doesn't want to go through a doorway that another person went through? Because they're a different race or a different color or they're missing a leg or a limb? How far does this go? Your job is to teach math, English, history as it actually happened. Your job is not to teach morality. That's parents' jobs. Get together with parents, get them doing their jobs, and you do yours. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Gabriel Black. I live at 140 Burnt Cedar Drive in North Kingstown. I'm a developmental psychologist and an educator, among other identities, and I am a member of the DEI committee. When I saw the call for applications for the committee, I was very excited. I've been in town for 4 years. I'm looking for ways to get involved, and this is one way that I can use my skill set to make this town and to help our children become better. It also fits my skill set because I'm a researcher who studies children who identify as LGBTQ and how best to support them, including through affinity groups. I want to speak to the kids in this room, though. We've been speaking to the adults. But I want the kids in this room, the students who are currently here, to know that there are adults in town who care about them, who are here to help them, to support them, to make sure that we have an inclusive school environment. And I will do what I can to help make the school system better and to help you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Sullivan. I live at 390 Boston Neck Road. I have 2 children who have been through North Kingstown School, one currently, and I'm also a licensed mental health provider, LICSW. I want to state my support today for affinity groups and the honest discussion of the history and racism of ongoing marginalization of minorities in our community and country. I'm an active advocate of the LGBTQ community, and here's the biggest reason why I support these groups in schools is that although I treat anxiety and depression and a variety of issues, the most important part of my job in 25 years of working with children and adolescents is preventing suicide. The risk factors that contribute to suicide are isolation, feeling misunderstood and judged, feeling different, feeling rejected. After the pandemic, we saw a 40% increase in the mental health needs of our children in the large medical agency that I work at. For that reason alone, we cannot justify shutting down opportunities for our teens to feel safe and supported. Standing against anti-racist groups, pro-BIPOC groups, and LGBT groups, I feel will put our kids in danger because it threatens to further isolate the youth who are already marginalized. Decades of science and social studies support and validate accepting people's differences within culture and race, accepting sexual orientation, and supporting all marginalized communities. If this science is not enough of a reason, can we base it on health and wellness? Can we at least agree that our health and wellness of our kids has to be primary? And I can stand up here today and say that if a child feels isolated, alone, different, and misunderstood, or rejected by society, they are in danger. They have an increased risk of taking their own lives or becoming very sick with depression or anxiety. You can say I'm being dramatic, but me and my colleagues are seeing this in the mental health field every single day. And children have been maybe never been more anxious and depressed and suicidal as they are after this pandemic. I think we can all relate to that and recognize that. So why would we waste our energy right now standing in the way of anything that could help our children feel supported? Why create a more isolated condition for a student instead of giving them a place where they could feel like there are others like them and give all of us the opportunity to learn from each other? So please don't make my job and other mental health professionals' jobs harder right now. Support this healthy and growth-oriented movement in our schools. It's not indoctrination, it's just growth, and it's for our children's health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's
Susanna Tingley, 750 Hatchery Road. I wasn't prepared to come here and speak, so I don't have a really big speech. I just want to say critical race theory scares me as a mom. My husband said our oldest just graduated. I have 2 more kids coming through the school system. NK is a great school system, but I have found once you're out of the elementary end of it, they don't want a lot of parent input. I feel there's a lot of pushback. I would just ask that you provide communication. You know, you hear about this on the news. We've seen it all over, you know, South Kingstown, they're against it. Now it's in our town, and it's scary to me. I don't want to see the academics change. I feel we can support our children. And I think you also need to think about the kids that maybe aren't in those minority groups. I have a child that sat in the class who has felt isolated, minimized, and scared to talk because their opinion was not the popular opinion. So you need to look at everybody. And I just ask that you involve parents. Please involve us. Please keep the communication open because I don't feel it's been there. And I don't have the funds to pull my kids out and put them in private school. So this is our education, and I ask that you let us be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Jordan Albanaz, 109 Mount View Road in Narragansett. I know I don't live in North Kingstown. I am a teacher here. I just wanted to share not my personal opinion, but a student who emailed me who wanted me to share the story. So they said, and I'm going to redact their name. I'm sure that there's, you know, someone will file suit to find out what their name is, but my name is CD, and I am a student at NKHS and a member of the subcommittee. I am sorry that I cannot make it here tonight to share my support for the student affinity groups. These groups are organized by students to support students who want to participate in them. They are not for the purpose of indoctrinating anyone. Affinity groups can help students who feel unwelcome. In my experience, there is a lot of negativity in North Kingstown schools, and this is especially true for anyone who is considered different. Affinity groups can help balance out some of that negativity. Thank you for considering my student opinion. Thank you, C. And on a personal level, I don't see any other class clubs or activities that are being investigated at the moment. It just seems to be this one. So on a personal level, thank you for all that you do and continue the good work. Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emma Michaud, and I live at 80 Boone Street in North Kingstown. I'm a member of the NKHS Racial Equity Alliance, and I'll be a junior at NK next year. As I listened to some people speak tonight, it was reaffirmed in my mind the necessity for the DEI subcommittee in North Kingstown. I acknowledge that NK is a predominantly white school, and too many times this has prevented the voices of people of color and other minorities within the school from being heard. The students at this school deserve a place to come and tell their story and share experiences without fear of judgment or the fear that they will not be listened to or taken seriously. Coming together to stop the racism and discrimination against any minority group, including LGBTQ+ and BIPOC members of the school community, is a necessity. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you understand the student point of view.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone else standing up, so I have some. Thank you, sir. So I have some other items that are on our, sorry, you distracted me. We have some that were emailed in earlier today or over the past few days that I'd like to read that are also citizens' comments. The first is from Gertrude Edwards of 24 Saunders Road, Saunderstown, Rhode Island. It says, thank you for your service to our town. This must have been an especially difficult semester as you navigated the changing pandemic restrictions and tried to do the impossible, make everyone happy. Many citizens' comments seem to come in the form of complaints, and some even sound like particularly angry personal attacks. Please know that in contrast to this very visible and vocal input, many others like me feel deep appreciation and admiration for your efforts as we follow your work. Another is from Kalia Schmur. She did not give her address. It says, I am writing to share my support for the creation of the DE&I affinity groups in North Kingstown schools. You may read this email at the meeting if you want. The affinity groups at the local schools were, I'm going to try to read this one quickly so I hit the 3 minutes. If it goes over, I'll put my own timer on. Okay. The affinity groups at the local schools were initiated by students, indicating that the students themselves know they want these groups and will benefit from them. These students are self-aware people living in a time of social turmoil and have come up with a solution to support each other. That is a good thing, and we should be proud of these students for taking this initiative. The narrative that this is being pushed by school officials and encouraging race-based separation is false and, frankly, really offensive. The people pushing back against the affinity groups clearly do not understand what an affinity group is or how it benefits those who participate. I work for a large multinational consulting firm. The company has a huge focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion worldwide. Part of how we embrace diversity and offer support is through our employee affinity groups. In North America, we currently have 5 EAGs: Black Employee Network, Women's Network, Pride Network, Latin Heritage Network, and the newest one, ADAPT, which stands for Able and Differing Abilities Partnering Together. I serve on the board of ADAPT. The beautiful thing about all of these groups is that anyone of any background is welcome to join any group. They are safe spaces for people to offer and get support, learn about each other, and share experiences. The presence of these groups encourages people of differing backgrounds to come together, learn something new, appreciate all of our differences. It is the best part of my company. This is the point of affinity groups wherever they are found, to embrace differences and offer inclusive spaces. Having affinity groups in a high school will better prepare students who are going to college, where there will also undoubtedly be affinity groups. To say that these groups are a way to separate children based on interests is at best a misinterpretation of the point. But I don't think this is a case of a misinterpretation. I think this is people making a concerted effort to sow fear in the minds of those who are unwilling to face the hard truths about this country's history and their own privilege. The argument that they are using against the affinity groups could be applied to basically any other group: sports teams, clubs, sororities, and fraternities. It sets a dangerous precedent, and the bottom line is it's disgusting. The students saw a need for these groups and took it upon themselves to create them, and the argument presented against them is absurd. This is from Valerie Cookson Boto, 421 Westmoreland Lane, Saunderstown. I am writing in support of the creation of affinity group/club for students that center around diversity and equity. To my knowledge, the school department has not regulated the clubs and groups that students choose to join as long as they're in keeping with the rules of the school. Any club that a student has wanted to form to explore and share common interests has been supported as long as the common interest isn't against the rules, like underage drinking. I see no reason that the school department should stop the formation of a club for students that want to gather and discuss diversity any more than it would stop a club that wanted to gather to discuss outdoor adventures, foreign cultures, or baking. I find it appalling to hear that members of the North Kingstown community would make an attempt to stop students from forming a group to discuss inclusion and equity, when research so clearly demonstrates that having a club to share common interests like equity only benefits the mental well-being of the students. Members of the community who are against the formation of a student affinity group like a school diversity club are actually trying to divisively divide the student body through their words, claiming that a diversity and inclusion club or affinity group would separate students by color. I see the opposite is true. A diversity and inclusion club would bring diverse students together to form a group that makes the school more inclusive and equitable. Please support the DEI subcommittee's recommendation to support the schools in the create affinity groups centered around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are the final email comments. Now, we also give people the opportunity to call in if they're at home and unable to attend. I'll just repeat the phone number is 401-268-6285 if anyone would like to do that. I'll wait a moment or two and see if anyone would like to call in. Yes. Yeah, that's right. Again, it's 401-268-6285. Okay, and finally, I'm going to make a brief citizen's comment of my own. Someone this evening read a portion of an email that I sent. I want to thank them for quoting me accurately. That is exactly the email that I sent, and I stand by every word. Thank you. Next on our agenda would be the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for...
Sir, you're out of order. Thank you. I'll let our attorney speak to that. Ms. Carroll.
The North Kingstown School Committee does not accept agenda items as part of an open meeting. All agenda items are placed on an agenda and are posted at least 48 hours in advance. So we do not accept any types of requests for added agenda items at our meeting. Thank you. Unfortunately, it is not contrary to general law. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ajay?
Thank you. And my superintendent's report is not on this topic tonight that people have come to the mic about, but I do want to thank you for your comments, everyone. And I would encourage people, when you have questions about these ideas, please, I'm more than happy to take a phone call. People talk about, you know, feeling like things are not being communicated or not transparent. I completely disagree. This whole process, the creation of that committee, was done by the school committee in open session. Anyone was welcome to attend, and every step of the way afterwards was as well. So I'm sincere about that. I think people can learn a great deal by having an open mind and by asking questions. And I'm happy to engage with anyone who would like to come to me and engage in that respect. So my comments tonight are about the end of the year. It has been a very challenging year, and you know, every step of the way, as I talked about many times, we have been following the Rhode Island Department of Health in their guidance about things like wearing masks and social distancing and all that. That is not done. This is still going on, and all I can say is that people have asked me about, you know, next year. I can tell you that our bus schedule will go back to the regular routine that we have. The high school will have a full day of school. What I can't tell you is details from the Department of Health and the governor about things like social distancing and mask wearing and capacity on buses and things like that. That's to come, and we're hoping that it will come very soon, and then I hope to have announcements for the community within the next couple of weeks in regards to that. But we'll take the information when we get it, and we'll make everything work, you know, one way or another. So I thank you all for your patience on that, and thank you, Mr. Blasbol.
Thank you. Thank you. So next we come to our routine items. If I could have a motion to seal the executive session minutes of June 22nd, 2021. I have a tie there. I'll give it to Ms. Hoskins. Do I have a second? Ms. Lima. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. Do any members have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand, second from Mr. Mather. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It passes unanimously. I was an aye. I don't think I said aye. Sorry. Next, we have unfinished business. Anything on the 2021 school budget?
No.
And Mrs. King, if you could speak briefly to the item B1 on the 2021-22 school budget.
Yes, so we are still waiting for the final state aid number from the General Assembly, so the state FY22 budget has not yet been approved. So what is before you tonight is a request for you to approve the budget that was presented by the town council, which really only had two changes, in which the town council reduced our town allocation and increased the state aid number based on information that they got from somewhere on a RIDE website. So I don't know what our state aid number is going to be right yet, so we need to adjust those so that we have a balanced budget, final budget to that number, and I'll come back to you in August with any change. If there's any dramatic change in our state aid number, clearly I'll come to you a lot earlier than that. But that's the request tonight. I will update the documents as such, and your budget will be dated June 22nd, 2021 as our final budget for FY22.
Thank you. So if I could have a motion to approve item B1. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, Do I have a second? A second from Mr. Mather. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I'm an aye. Passes unanimously. CIP, existing bond or future bond?
Nothing.
Okay. Next, we have some policies. We have if I could have a motion, what we're going to do is delete, and this is part of cleaning up some of our policies, making them a little simpler. So if I could get a motion to approve item D1, which is the deletion of JCLE. I have a motion from Ms. Lima, second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. The revision to our policies and procedures for emergencies. So this just is let's get a motion in a second, first of all. Could I get a motion to approve? Have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand to approve D2, second from Ms. Lima. So we reapprove this every year. It's gone over by our medical, both our nursing department as well as our medical director, and it's just an update. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And if I could get a motion to approve item D3, which is the revisions to the GCB policy. Motion from Mr. Mather, second from Ms. Lima. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So I'm going to make a motion on this one. First of all, I'm going to briefly just explain what we're doing here. So as most of you, I think all of you know, our former athletic director, Dick Fossa, passed away last year. The Booster Club had made the suggestion that the high school field that was just constructed, partially, a great deal of which he was responsible for helping to work on, be named in his honor. And just to be clear, the stadium, we're not talking about the stadium, we're talking about the field itself. They've graciously offered to donate a sign to recognize that. And we have a policy on naming of things for people, and it says that we can't consider a request until a year has gone by since their passing, and we've just reached that point with Mr. Fossa. So I'm going to make a motion that the school committee begin the procedure to name the field after Dick Fossa. And then what we will do after that is we will schedule a public hearing on that. It has to be done within 90 days. And Mrs. King, did we decide, or we'll decide later which meeting? I think we're going to do it in August. Was that what we were talking about?
Yeah, the first meeting in August is August 10th.
Okay, so it'll obviously be publicized when that public hearing is going to be. We'll hold a public hearing to give members of the public the opportunity to comment on the proposal, and then after that public hearing, probably immediately after that public hearing, we can take a vote on whether we want to go forward with that. So my motion is that we begin that process, and I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any discussion?
I just have one point. Can you talk about the town council piece
Yes.
of this?
That's why if we stay within the August 10th meeting, the town council, I have connected Ms. Cara Martone with Jeanette Allyward. The town also will put this on their agenda for an approval, and they're going to do the same thing. They will do an approval, and then they will do a public hearing within 90 days. So Ms. Martone is aware of that. She's connected to Jeanette, and obviously I've told her I'm here to help if she needs any assistance. But us staying with that process will help them, the boosters, and Cara get to the town council as well.
So the town council can do it simultaneous with us, or do they have to wait until we go through our
No, they
meeting?
would do it after us.
After us?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And again, just to be clear, we're not actually approving doing it yet. We're approving kicking off the process.
Right.
It's bureaucracy, so here we are. We had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, thank you. Next, we have a approval of a memorandum agreement with the North Kingstown Educational Support Personnel Union, as well as a fiscal impact statement that goes along with that. If I could have a motion to approve item 7.1. A motion
Second.
from Ms. Hoskins, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have the appointment of members to the North Kingstown Educational Support Personnel Contract Negotiations Subcommittee. So we need to have 2 members of the school we need at least 1, 2, but no more than 2 members of the school committee to do that. Now, I would volunteer to do that. I think Ms.
I'd like to
Hildebrand would also, unless any of you want to jump into all of that. I'd ask, I'll make a motion that myself and Ms. Hildebrand do that. And I need a second. I've got a second from Ms. Lima. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And again, it's just we work with the union. Ultimately, the contract comes before the entire school committee for approval. And next, we have school committee approval of a memorandum of agreement with the NEA-NK regarding ESSER funds and hiring. If I can get a motion to approve item 9.1. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins and a second from Ms. Lima. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, I need a motion to approve item 10.1, which is a Office of Family Learning grant. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Mrs. King, could you just, or I don't know who's the right person to speak briefly to that, or I can.
This is actually a
We're saying yes to money that's being given to us, so it's
It
usually
is, and
not
this is
particularly
actually just-
controversial. I
it's
just wanted to highlight it a little bit for
Right,
their hard work in getting the grant.
It's a continuation of a grant from last year that Office of Family Learning will help them continue a lot of their work in this area. And because it's over $5,000, we do need to bring it to you for approval. But you're right, Chairman, it's very important that we recognize the great work that Office of Family Learning does and the hard work they do. They're really behind the scenes, but they're very important to the district, and this just shows how they're really out there trying to get grants and trying to make sure their program is valuable to our families.
Thank you very much.
If I can add to that, I'm part of the board of directors of Healthy Bodies, Healthy Minds with the Washington County Coalition. I represent the superintendents in the area, and it's a tremendous organization, and they have worked with our Office of Family Learning on a number of community projects in the northern part of town particularly, and we really appreciate their support.
And I just want to point out, it is a $30,000 grant. So, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we have school committee approval of our suggested names to the North Kingston Town Council to be our audit committee representative. By the town charter, we're supposed to submit 3 names for consideration to the town council. Unfortunately, we received only 2 applications, so we don't have 3 names, we have 2. So I will make the motion that we send the 2 names of people who expressed an interest. Those people are Robert Jones, who I think you all or most of you know, who is a former member of the school committee, and David Johnston, who, based on his letter, is a attorney and resident of town who has some small children and wants to get involved as well. So if I could get, I made the motion to approve Robert Jones and David Johnston. I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And we have some reports. No new business. We have reports, which is a disposal notification and the financial reports. Any questions on any of those? If not, we've reached the end of our agenda, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, second Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you to everyone who spoke this evening.